The initial 53-man roster has been set for the Green Bay Packers, actually coming in technically at 52. And while there were some notable cuts, the biggest travesty of them all, Tom Grossi's still not on this football team. Grossi Posse Packer Nation, welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Took you long enough, Packers, to release it 2 hours after the deadline, too? What's going on? Grossi, and today we're going to be breaking down the 53-man roster. Again, only technically 52. We'll be talking about how the Green Bay Packers traded for a punter, released J.K. Scott, and we'll talk about what I got right, what I got wrong in terms of the roster. So let's start off with the news that came out right before the roster, and that was the Green Bay Packers parting ways with punter and part-time high schooler J.K. Scott. J.K. Scott, who showed flashes in which, oh man, he could be amazing, and then had those highest of highs and then the lowest of lows. The inconsistency is what killed J.K. Scott. They brought another punter in for camp, and that didn't work out as well, and now it seems that the J.K. Scott experiment is over. Instead, trading with the LA Rams to get Corey Bojorquez, and I had to look up many videos to make sure that I was pronouncing that correctly. Traded a 2023 6th-round pick, and they got, in exchange, they got Bojorquez, and they got a 2023 7th-round pick. So, yeah, spending some draft picks on punters, but hey, we needed somebody who could be consistent. And here's the thing. Bojorquez has shown that he could be real good. During this preseason, he had 7 punts and averaged 51.9 yards per kick. He was with the Rams. He spent 3 years on the Buffalo Bills, but he was with the Rams because he was going against Johnny Hekker, who wound up coming back, and that's why Bojorquez was available. This is his 4th year in the league. Back in 2020, he had a 72-yard punt, was averaging 50.8 yards per kick. Also had a 12-yard punt, so it could go either way. The highest of highs, lowest of lows. But what he showed last year was he was pretty damn consistent, and on top of that, had a really nice preseason. So I think that's going to be really nice to have some consistency. However, I hope to not even have to utilize him too much because we're just going to keep on scoring points. So it's not even going to need a punter. And before we break down the roster, I also wanted to do this little tad bit that the Houston Texans released Kadar Hollman. And if that name sounds familiar, that's because the Packers just traded Kadar Hollman to the Texans for an unconditional 7th-round pick. So basically, we just got a free 7th-round pick. And I know it's not much, but thanks, Texans. So with all that being said, let's talk about the roster that sits in front of us. 24 men on offense, 26 on defense, technically only 2 on the special teams before Bojorquez's trade is finalized, but that's what we got right this second. Again, a couple notable cuts here. I was only wrong on 4 things, so not too bad. At a 53, not too bad. But let's go position by position and talk about what the Packers decided to do at each. First, starting off, you had the QBs. We only kept 2 with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. I said this yesterday. Unfortunately, Kurt Benkert was waived, which is always going to break my heart considering he literally popped into the Madden stream yesterday and it was amazing, and I threw a touchdown with Kurt Benkert, and it was a moment to never forget and always cherish. Now, the good news is that Josh Rosen actually signed with the Falcons, who know all about Kurt Benkert, so there is a possibility that he does make his way back onto the practice squad, and I hope to see that. But no shocker here that you're going to have 2 QBs in Rodgers and Love. That's how they're going to roll. Then moving on to running backs. Again, no shocker here. Dexter Williams was released, but Aaron Jones, Kylan Hill, and of course, AJ Quadfather / Quadzilla Dillon making the roster, rolling with 3 running backs. The Packers also decided to stay with 6 wide receivers, cutting Equanimeous St. Brown, which he had all the talent in the world, but just couldn't stay on the field. Again, I predicted that yesterday. Also letting Juwan Winfrey walk. Hopefully we can get Winfrey back and get him on a practice squad, but the Packers decided to roll with 6. At tight end, they stuck with 4, going with Robert Tonyan, Josiah DeGuara, Mercedes Big Dog Lewis, and Dominique Daphne. Now, Jay Sternberger, again, is suspended for those 2 weeks, so he doesn't count towards the 53-man roster. So after those 2 weeks in week 3, we'll see what the Packers decide to do with Jay Sternberger. Then where I had my first miss, you had the Packers sticking with 9 offensive linemen because David Bakhtiari went to the PUP list. He wasn't eligible for IR because he would have had to pass a physical in order to get on the roster. So now he's chilling on the PUP list. So they decided to roll with Jenkins, Myers, Turner, Patrick, Neiman, Newman, Runyon Jr., Kelly, and Jake Hansen. This is where I got my first error, in which Jake Hansen was kept over Braden. Hansen didn't really have the greatest preseason in the world, but I guess they're still going to rock with him for a little bit. So that was the first one that I had incorrectly, but that rounds out your offense. Then on the defensive side of the ball, we decided to stick with 26. 6 defensive linemen in Clark, Slayton, Kiki, do you love me? Lowry Heflin, so happy that he made the team, and Tyler Lancaster. So I had them just sticking with 5 defensive linemen. They decided to continue with Lancaster. They obviously like him enough to keep him around, and so they kept an extra body there. Moving on to outside linebacker, you had Za'Darius and Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Jonathan Garvin, and Chauncey Rivers, a guy who I mentioned at the end of yesterday's video. I had them waiving him, but he still made the team. Rivers showed those flashes, could be good. We should be really, really good at pass rusher at this point, but it'll give Rivers some time to develop. Inside linebacker, they went with Barnes, Burks, Campbell, Summers, and Isaiah McDuffie. I predicted all of them to be on the roster, and they did. Now, Joe Barry, go make them into superstars. At corner, they went with Alexander, King, Stokes, Sullivan, Gene Charles, and Yadam. That was my big toss-up yesterday, saying, is it between Ento and Yadam? And I gave the slight edge to Yadam because of special teams, and it looks like I was at least correct on that. And so, Ento, maybe they bring him back to the practice squad, but the issue was his tackling, so I just knew that he wasn't going to really be able to contribute on special teams where he was going to be needed. And to round out the defense with safeties, they kept 4 instead of 5, so they rolled with Amos, Savage, Scott, and Henry Black. So they wound up cutting Upoff. That was the other error that I had, in that I had them keeping Upoff just because it was Joe Barry's defense and how they utilize safeties, but I was wrong on that one. But who knows what could change over the next couple of days. They could bring somebody in and let somebody else go. Then for the special teams unit, technically it's only 2 right now. Mason Crosby, of course, making the team. J.K. Scott being released. We brought in Corey Bojorquez instead, but that has not been official yet, so technically it's 52. And Hunter Bradley, there's a question mark there, but still made the 53. Is that going to be permanent? We'll find out within the next couple of days, but Hunter Bradley has still made the team. So overall, giving kind of just my overview synopsis of this, nothing terribly surprising here, and especially on the offensive side of the ball. The only thing I saw that was a little surprising was Braden getting let go instead of Hansen. But defense, they decided to keep an extra guy with Lancaster and Rivers, shoring up that defensive line, as well as the outside linebackers. And overall, there are some positions like inside linebacker that's a lot of young, raw talent. But yeah, I think that this unit, both offensive and defensively, can be really, really good. The offense last year was the #1 scoring offense. I don't see anything here that could change that. Obviously, David Bakhtiari missing the first 6 weeks is definitely going to hurt, and Josh Myers, hopefully, will step up. And while Elton Jenkins is most likely to be at left tackle, we just have to worry a little bit about that right tackle position. But overall, I think that this offense should continue to hum. And with this defense under Barry, I think there are so many playmakers here. You have a secondary that's great with Amos and Savage backing up safeties. You have Jair Alexander, of course, holding it down at corner, and a whole bunch of young talent along with Kevin King, who hopefully can step up and be what that secondary needs to. And if that defensive front is able to get after the quarterback with the emergence of guys like Rashawn Gary, yeah, it's gonna be a good time on defense. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. How do you feel about this roster? I know we're still mourning over the waiving of Kurt Benkert, but hopefully he comes back into the practice squad. But either way, he'll never leave our hearts. But let me know. You can always send me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy, all social media you see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. We'll be having a stream in a little bit, probably about an hour or so, breaking down all the crazy news of the day. I will see you then. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.